This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, across the world, stock markets put their foot back on the gas today. Investors were hopeful that Washington could resolve its debt ceiling squabbles. Also, a global drop in energy prices did temper deepening fears of a stagflation. Now, as a result, most emerging market stocks rose today, with its MSCI's Emerging Market Index jumping 1.8% on the day. That's after sinking to a 6-week low earlier. In South Africa, the resource index climbing over 3% on the day. We saw industrials and resources up over 8%. Now, also coming up on today's show, Nigeria lays out a record $39.8 billion budget for the year 2022. U.S. Senate Democrats and Republicans reach a deal on an $480 billion debt limit increase. And a Nigerian tech startup that links software engineering talent to global firms, it raised about $200 million. Now, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has presented the country's 2022 budget to a joint sitting in Parliament. The country plans to spend almost $40 billion next year. And of course, the government has made clear it will still borrow to fund that budget. President Buhari says much of those funds will be invested in infrastructure. Here's CGTN's Deji Badamosi with more on that story.
Expectedly, Parliament was packed full for the annual budget presentation of the President. Tagged budget of economic growth and sustainability, the President said the 2022 budget will be invested in critical infrastructure and reducing poverty, among others.
Nigeria is currently emerging from a very difficult economic challenge. We must continue to cooperate and ensure that our actions are aimed at accelerating the pace of economic recovery so that we can achieve economic prosperity and deliver on our promises to Nigerian people.
The key parameters of the budget include oil benchmark price of $57 per barrel, daily oil production of 1.88 million barrels per day, exchange rate at 410 per dollar, GDP growth rate of 4.2%, and 14.2% inflation rate.
Based on these fiscal assumptions and parameters, total federally collectible revenue is estimated to 17.7 trillion naira in 2022. Total federally contributable revenue is estimated to 12.72 trillion naira in 2022. Total revenue available to fund the 2022 federal budget is estimated at 10.13 trillion naira. This includes grants and aid of 63.38 billion naira, as well as the revenue of 63 government-owned enterprises. Oil revenue is projected at 3.16 trillion naira. Non-oil taxes are estimated at 2.13 trillion naira, and federal government independent revenues are projected to be 1.82 trillion naira.
With expected revenue estimated at approximately $24.7 billion, that leaves a deficit of around $15.2 billion. The government says it will borrow to fund the deficit.
The resultant deficit of 6.258 trillion will be financed by new borrowings in the sum of 5.012 trillion, of which 50% will be domestic and 50% foreign. There will also be drawdowns on project-tied multilateral bilateral loans in the sum of 1.156 trillion and privatization proceeds in the sum of 90.73 billion.
The new borrowings will drive up Nigeria's debt further, which as of September this year was put at approximately $86.6 billion. Now, the government has made a provision of $8.8 billion for debt servicing in the 2022 budget. Deji Bademasi, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Well, let's now take that budget further apart with Deji Bademasi. He joins us in Lagos with some more insights. Great to have you, as always, Deji. Now, any surprises in this almost $40 billion budget?
Well, Uche, not a surprise at all. It's exactly what was expected. As a matter of fact, the Minister of Finance had actually spoken about it days before the President presented the budget. So not a surprise at all. We can clearly see that, of course, the budget is an increment over the budget of 2021. And so essentially, you look at it, there are no surprises at all. All the budget, the key parameters of the budget, everyone expected was going to be the way they are. So not a big surprise.
Well, one thing many are pointing to is that the budget projects about 25% year-on-year rises in government spending. Given that the country has been struggling to fund its spending plans, due, of course, to those low revenues, is it clear exactly how the government plans to fund this budget?
Well, the President made that clear, and when the government had the Federal Executive Council meeting on Wednesday, the Minister of Finance also made that clear. The government intends to borrow, and you saw that in my package. The government intends to borrow both domestically and from foreign sources, and of course they are projecting that they're going to raise money through some other channels. But essentially, the government will be borrowing to fund the budget, and that is where the concern is for a lot of people, because as we speak today, Uche, the country's total budget is estimated at $86.6 billion. A lot of people have said, look, that is actually too high. You look at the revenue, so to speak, that the government makes. A lot of people are worried that at some point the government might find it difficult to pay those debt. As we speak now, $8.8 billion has been budgeted for debt servicing for 2022, and you look at how much the government is also projecting to come in 2022. So that's something. It's really huge. So that is where the concern is. The concern is not whether well, the government will be borrowing. The concern is that you can see where the revenue is going to come from that the government will use to pay the debt. But then the government is pretty confident that there's no cause for alarm, and that the debt to revenue ratio is very low, and that even though there's a concern with the revenue to debt ratio, but that it just would be able to pay up. And the good thing is that we can see that the price of oil is going up. So the hope is that things remain the way they are now, and that the price of oil continues to go up, and that things remain steady. Then the country might just be able to wait through this.
Well, on that note, let's talk about how the budget assumes crude production of 1.88 million barrels a day. It also assumes an oil price of $57 per barrel. It's also forecasting GDP growth at 4.2% and inflation at 13%. Looking at what experts have to say, are these projections too optimistic? Of course, given the fundamentals, do they align with this projection?
Well, to be candid, if you ask me, I think when you talk about inflation, the government projecting inflation and projecting to achieve a 14% inflation, that might be a bit optimistic, even though inflation is moderating as we speak. But the truth is that it's not coming down. Food inflation especially, is still a very big problem. The government has still not been able to rein in on food inflation. So, and we all know part of the reason is because of the insufficient insecurity challenges you have in some parts of the country, especially the parts of the country that are considered the food basket of Nigeria. So inflation-wise, it's difficult to make a call, but in terms of the oil production now, that is very possible with the passage of the Petroleum Industry Bill. Now we have the Petroleum Industry Act. The expectation is that we're going to see more investment now in the oil sector. So if you're going to see more investment in the oil sector, it obviously means that, well, the rig count of the country would go up. So we're going to see more activities in the oil sector. And now, as we speak, there's an incentive from producers to produce because of the price of oil in the international oil market. So if things continue to stay that way, there's every possibility that the 1.88 million barrels per day will be met. Don't also forget that it includes condensate as well, which is about 400,000 barrels per day. So essentially, if you're talking about crude per se, you're looking at 1.5 or say around 1.4 million barrels per day. So it's very, very possible to achieve that target. $57 per barrel, I don't think that's optimistic when you consider the fact that oil is currently trading above $70 per barrel. So, but 4.2% of GDP growth rate, well, Uche, you look at the past budgets of this country, say the past 3, 4, 5 budgets of this country, the government had never achieved its target GDP growth rate. So it's difficult to see that happen this time.
Well, staying on a positive note, Nigeria's economy did expand by about 5% in the second quarter of this year. It is projected to grow by up to 3% this year. In light of this, what is the market consensus? What are analysts and economic experts saying? Are they confident about this budget?
Well, everybody's just keeping an eye on what the situation is with the price of oil. And that's what is giving people some confidence. The expectation is that the global economy will continue to gather steam as more industries open globally, that Nigeria will have markets market now for its oil. I mean, we can currently see what the price of oil is today, and that is actually telling on the country's reserve. I mean, in just the past 1 month, the country has made around, I think it was revealed yesterday that the country had made around $2-something billion now added to its reserve, and that is essentially as a result of the current price of oil. So that's what people are actually looking at. In terms of the 3% growth rate, people are confident. You look at, you just mentioned it, I think 5% or so in the second quarter of this year. So the expectation is that the next quarter will be better, and at the end of the year, Nigeria might be hitting 3%, and by 2022, it might remain that way. But of course, very crucial in this whole equation is what the situation is with oil in the international oil market. So because whether we like it or not, Nigeria is still heavily dependent on oil, and it's going to continue like that for the foreseeable future. So oil is very, very crucial to what the situation of the economy will be, not just in 2022, but 2022 going forward. Uche?
Quite right. Well, as always, great to have you with us on the show, Deji. That, of course, is Deji Badimosi. He's joining us there in Lagos. Well, let's move on now. Collaborations between mobile phone operators, banks and fintech startups are now changing businesses and financial services in Tanzania. This trend is expected to further promote the use of digital payments. Well, fintech solutions such as Tunza are now changing the way low-income Tanzanians save and access funds to improve their livelihoods. Here's CGTN's Daniel Kijo with more.
Founded just 3 months ago, financial technology company Tunza is offering low-income Tanzanians an opportunity to save the items they need without having to use a bank. Since June this year, the company has already grown 5 times. With 5,000 registered accounts, 100 people registering on the platform each day, this is just one of the many fintech companies that are mushrooming in Tanzania's financial service sector. With over 1,000 placed orders, 200 businesses signed up to sell goods on the platform, Tunza's founder says his company exists for one function: to use technology for enhancing financial inclusion.
We found our sweet spot, which is the combination of a marketplace. We put merchants here, people who are selling TVs, cell phones, on one platform. And then on the other side, you have people who have their money on mobile money services. So we thought, what if we could combine these two, allow people to access goods and services, but at the same time using technology and some banking knowledge.
The government works with organizations like the Financial Sector Deepening Trust, or FSDT, to drive the shift in the financial inclusion agenda, from access to usage and quality. According to FinScope Tanzania 2017, Tanzania has made remarkable progress in expanding the opportunities for people to access and use financial services. The use of formal financial services has reached 65% in 2017 compared to 57.7% in 2013.
If we are to refer to the statistics from 2017 FinScope, we have a complete turn of the market where we're having 65% of the people, by and large, are actually included in the financial system. And the biggest driver of that has actually been the digital financial services. And from in one way or another, the digital financial services is a disruption that has happened. And that's basically what you're talking about, Fintech here coming to have a big play into the financial sector development in the market.
Mobile money solutions like M-Pesa, offered by Vodacom, and Tigo Pesa, offered by Tigo, were some of the first crossover financial solutions, connecting banks to mobile phone users. Since then, the growth in active mobile wallets reaching over 21 million users, which are held by 16.6 million Tanzanian adults, as reported by FinScope Tanzania 2017. But the head of FSDT feels this is just the beginning.
You need to be thinking grand, you need to thinking major, and that is an excellent competence that is actually being brought about by the MNOs. They know how to actually reach the people. They have the mechanism to actually be able to extend those rails so that they're able to reach. So a combination of the two, and then interesting enough, you're also bringing in the fintechs. The fintechs by themselves, they also have a huge role because these guys they're bubbling with ideas, disruptive ideas, ideas that will actually change the business model that is needed.
Technologies like Tunza offer safe and secure transactions that let customers and businesses operate with confidence. It's hoped that this financial inclusion increase will create capital accumulation, which in turn increases economic growth. A few years ago, financial institutions, mobile phone companies, and fintech companies were competing to service Tanzania's 67% unbanked population. But as financial inclusion, innovation, and technologies grow, the separating line between these players is slowly getting blurred, allowing a blending of services that is enhancing access to financial services for the people who need it most. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Well, on that note, here's a look at our corporate headlines today. Eskom Holdings says that retrofitting about half of its coal-fired plants with pollution-cutting equipment will cost about $20 billion. The firm has applied for an exemption from complying with national emission limits for its power plants that, of course, are scheduled to close by 2030. Meanwhile, American big pharma Moderna says that it will invest up to $500 million to build a factory in Africa that will produce 500 million messenger RNA vaccine doses a year. It also adds that the new factory will produce the drug substance for messenger RNA vaccines, including its COVID-19 vaccine and shots for other diseases, and potentially also have vial filling capabilities. Meanwhile, Absa Bank Kenya has lent East African breweries a total of $169.8 million, breaching the limits placed on lending to a single borrower. The bank has a core capital of an estimated $418 million, meaning that it should not lend more than 25% to one entity. Now, the rule is designed to reduce the risk of bank failure due to defaults on a few big loans. And finally, Ryanair and British Airways customers who say they are owed refunds because of COVID restrictions on travel could now miss out because the competition regulator says the law is unclear. The Competition and Markets Authority has closed an investigation into the two airlines. Instead of offering refunds, the carriers are now offering vouchers or rebooking. And that's a look at our corporate headlines. And on that note, we head into a short break now, but do stay with us. Lots more business news are coming up.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business, only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay, we'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Uche Okoronkwo. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back. Now, a Nigerian tech startup called Andela that connects African software engineering talent to global companies has now become the latest startup on the continent to attain unicorn status. That's after raising $200 million from investors led by Japanese tech investor SoftBank Group. Andela is now worth about $1.5 billion, making it one of the few Nigerian startups to attain the unicorn status of $1 billion in valuation. It is a significant milestone for a firm that was launched just 7 years ago in Lagos and now has a network of engineers from more than 80 countries and 6 continents. Here's CGTN's Deji Bademosi with more of their story.
Andela's unicorn status is a huge milestone for a firm that started out of Lagos with just a handful of software engineers back in 2014. It's now joined the elite club of other Nigerian startups like Flutterwave and OPay, which have since attained the billion-dollar valuation.
Andela's valuation of $1.5 billion is a testament to, the fact that, we're growing, and the importance of remote work and how Andela is really at the forefront of helping companies to connect with software engineers. We started this journey in Africa, and now we've expanded beyond, and we're looking to scale our efforts. From a continent perspective, I think it's exciting also to see how the Africa tech ecosystem is growing and maturing, and also to see the rise of other startups that are achieving this status as well.
Andela helps companies build remote engineering teams by providing them with access to the best software engineers in the world. Last year, with the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, the startup went fully remote with no physical offices or hubs. And early this year, it began a global expansion into Latin and South America. The firm says the latest funding from the Japanese SoftBank Group will go into that expansion.
Andela plans to invest in developing products to simplify global hiring and make engineers' lives easier. We will continue to expand our talent offering beyond just software engineering. And this is based on the needs of our customers. We're seeing a growing demand. We're seeing more and more companies want to provide more engaging and personalized online experiences for their respective customers. So what you can expect to see in terms of our expansion plans is we'll continue to grow here in Africa and beyond into other markets. We're seeing now that we're receiving applications from over 170 countries across 6 different continents, which goes to show that there's a real pain point that we're solving.
Andela's rise from just operating in 3 African countries to a global player in the tech space is a testament to the rapid development that is taking place in the African tech ecosystem. Now based in New York, the startup is projecting itself as a global leader when it comes to helping companies build remote engineering teams from anywhere in the world. DG Badimasi, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
And heading to Tunisia now, the authorities there have signed an agreement with the Tunisian Inclusive Labour Institute to help women working in informal sectors. Now, the North African nation is also providing financial support to thousands of women entrepreneurs whose businesses have been shattered by the COVID-19 pandemic. Here's CGTN's Adnan Shaushi reporting.
The Ministry of Women, Family and Seniors in Tunisia has announced that the state is aiming to boost the solidarity economy initiatives led by women throughout the country. In addition, the North African state's government will also help SMEs led by women to recover from the pandemic-induced fallout.
We'll support solitary women who want to work together in business groupings. This is part of the solidarity economy. The state will not abandon the women entrepreneurs who are forced to lay off employees. They need to get back to economic life and in good conditions.
Tunisian authorities provided around $8.8 million for the project of women empowerment in the business sector for the period between 2015 to 2020. The minister said the budget will increase for the 2021-2026 period.
Tunisian female startups are the target of our project. We supported 4,500 women over the past 5 years because both numbers and quantity are important. Now we are focused on the quality of the project. We'll support 3,000 women entrepreneurs. The funding will go up to $100,000 for each project.
Experts assert that Tunisia needs to work closely with female farmers and women entrepreneurs in the agricultural sector, which is a vital economic activity for the national economy.
The new project of women leaders provides technical and financial support to women who have invested in the agricultural sector. This was not possible in the past because the ministry's budget was limited. Now we have new partners, namely the Tunisian Solidarity Bank, the National Agricultural Bank, and the Bank for Financing Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises.
Tunisian women's rights activists and state organizations are working on strengthening women's rights and conditions for decent work. Authorities are also keen to support the rights of women working in unorganized and informal sectors. The Ministry of Women, Family and Seniors announced that her departments will launch several awareness campaigns on improving the conditions of women working in informal sectors. The ministry has also devised a strategy of supporting women refugees and migrants while facilitating access to microcredit. Aden Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
And in Uganda, farmers are doing their best to survive and thrive despite the COVID-19 pandemic disrupting their food supply chains and of course causing price fluctuations. Well, CGTN's Hilary Ayesiga spent a day at a poultry farm in Kampala and now brings us this report.
Anthony Serunjoji is preparing to sell his eggs. He's been rearing chicken for 8 years now.
Try as much as possible to locate good suppliers of the ingredients. For example, the maize brand, the concentrate. Once you have a good, complete feed meal, the birds are going to enjoy it and then they will give back just what you gave them. Your production levels will be better.
In a day, he collects about 120 trays of eggs. Serunjoji rears about 7,000 birds here. He says keeping a sizable number of chicken and also stocking enough feeds has helped his business keep afloat during the pandemic. He now wants to boost production, but finding a bigger market is still a challenge.
Right about now, it's not as easy to deliver our eggs to our biggest market, which was Kenya. So I would call for our government to make measures with these other fellow governments to help and solve this problem.
To address his concerns, the Uganda government is negotiating with Kenya to allow more imports from Uganda.
The state is coming in to look for markets and to organize companies to go and attend promotion events and hold them in these markets, to negotiate deals and hand it over to these companies, but also do what we call exporter aftercare.
The government has also created affordable loan schemes for farmers. Figures from the Uganda Bureau of Statistics show that 70% of Ugandans are involved in agriculture. With extra help, poultry farmers like Serunjoji are hoping not only to beat the effects of the pandemic, but also improve their incomes. Hilary Ayesiga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
You're watching Global Business Africa. Let's take a short break now, but still to come on the show. U.S. Senate Democrats and Republicans reach a deal on a $480 billion debt limit increase. And UK companies hold talks amid an unprecedented energy crisis.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
No one again began holding guns. Machine guns from police forces towards the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time? Not at all.
The experts, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant.
Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
Welcome back, and now to some international news. The U.S. Senate has taken steps towards passing a $480 billion increase in Treasury Department borrowing authority. Now, this move averts a catastrophic debt default later this month, but it also sets up another partisan showdown in early December. Democratic Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is now aiming to hold an important procedural vote to fast-track the process, and that vote could come sooner if all 100 members of the Senate agree.
Just to be absolutely clear for our viewers, in the last week we've had three key issues here on the agenda in Congress. Number one, the government was about to run out of money on new spending, but they did a deal between the House and the Senate, and they signed a temporary bill to tide them over until December the 3rd. So that's gone. That's not a problem. The Democrats in the main are trying to fight to get their infrastructure and their social spending bills sorted out. That's going on till the end of October, so that's ongoing. And where we are today, what we're talking about today, is the debt ceiling, and this is money already spent, that's gone. Now, I try very hard not to rubbish America in any way, because I've lived here for 20 years. I try hard not to do that. But, you know, honestly, only in America would you have an ongoing fight that comes back time and time again over the money that you've already spent. I mean, most countries in the world, they seem to say, well, we've spent the money, okay, here's the credit card, we'll put it on the credit card. I mean, that is what all of them around the world, except for about 3, including this one, actually do. But this one, they have to have a big political fight. And that is what's going on now. So, on the 18th of October, which is a week on Monday, the US is in very real danger of running out of money. And Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, says it's very serious, and it is serious, she's right about that. would be a catastrophe if they didn't raise the debt ceiling. What it means is that government buildings will close down, government workers will be furloughed, and most worryingly of all, the US will not be able to pay interest on government bonds, which have been issued over many, many years. Now, this has never happened, okay? But the country has been downgraded in its effectiveness on 2 occasions, which was very, very embarrassing. Now, what has happened is the Republican Party, which is the minority party in the House and the Senate, and of course, they're not in the White House either. Mitch McConnell, who's the minority leader in the Senate, even though he has very little incentive to do this, has actually said in the past 24 hours, look, we'll put a deal on the table to get you over this issue of the debt limit. And my understanding is that it's a dollar amount, not a date amount. And the deal runs out around about Thanksgiving, the major public holiday here of Thanksgiving, which this year is Thursday, the 25th of November. Now, they always do this. For some reason I've never fully understood, Congress love major public holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving. They love us all standing there in the Russell Building over the other side of the road from the Congress, waiting for them to make an 11th hour deal on government spending. And my understanding is that this deal, part of it, the Republicans want, this is hugely complicated, so I'm going to simplify it. The Republicans want the Democrats to use a process called budget reconciliation, which they don't want to do. So in other words, the deal is on the table, but we're still in total limbo because there is no actual deal, and that deadline is looming of Monday, October the 18th. Now, finally, I predict a deal will be done because it always has been done, and if it isn't done, it'll really damage the credibility of the United States in the world. And when they do that deal sometime, presumably, I don't know, around Thanksgiving, they'll find a way of eking it out between a week on Monday and Thanksgiving. Then the next one, of course, is that new spending that I talked about at the top, which is going to come back and haunt them again. I mean, only in America, folks, only in America.
On that note, let's head to Europe now, where gas and electricity prices are soaring. The base price for natural gas prices costs more than 6 times than that of half a year ago. Well, EU leaders are now meeting in Slovenia, trying to solve the crisis, which is a top priority for now. CGTN's Ryan Thompson with the details.
A long, cold, and expensive winter is likely ahead for millions of Europeans. The continent is facing a severe energy crisis that sent prices for gas and electricity soaring. The base price for natural gas hitting $135 Tuesday, up from just $20 6 months ago. EU leaders meeting in Slovenia have called for the crisis to become a top priority, but there are divisions within the bloc about a common approach.
EU must change its policy because partly, the reason why the prices are up is the fault of the Commission. So we have to change some regulations, otherwise everybody will suffer.
Europe's southern and eastern countries are feeling the biggest pinch. Hungary, France, and Spain have all enacted domestic policies to limit price rises. But that will cost national governments billions, and prices are still expected to rise even more in the next few months. Some have called for Brussels to offer emergency funds to alleviate the pressure. But those calls have so far gone unanswered.
It is a serious issue. I think we have to be very clear that the gas prices are skyrocketing. But the renewables, the prices have decreased over the last years and are stable. So for us it's very clear that with energy in the long term, it is important to invest in renewables. That gives us stable prices and more independence.
Effects of the energy crisis will go beyond regular Europeans' electricity bills. Economists warn it could hold back the entire bloc's economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. Bond prices have fallen sharply, and there are increasing concerns about further inflation.
We have 3 massive autumn storms to endure. One is rising inflation, the second is the fear of rising interest rates, and the third is the economy, because there are commodities and supply shortages. The markets are struggling and it will remain very volatile.
Meanwhile, energy companies in Britain are holding their annual conference in London, and that's amid an unprecedented crisis in the sector with soaring fuel prices, a shortage of gas, and the prospect of energy rationing. Here's Angeline Ong with more from London.
There have been very few times in living memory that have presented such a challenge to the industry. Today, Britain's national grid said there could be shortages of power this winter. But this is also a Europe-wide phenomenon. It's impacting on industry, food production and distribution and exports. Just today, we heard of a sharp fall in Germany's manufacturing output, caused in large part by problems in the supply chain and higher energy prices. So industry leaders meeting today have a huge challenge to find a way of fixing these issues. Governments are powerless for the most part. It's simply an issue of supply versus demand. And as economies start to grow again after the pandemic, the energy industry hasn't been able to keep up. A commitment to net zero is forcing energy firms to switch to renewables. And sometimes there just isn't enough wind or sunlight to make that work. It's unlikely we'll get any answers soon, but Russia's promise to increase supplies might just provide a sticking plaster for now.
Well, let's now head to the Expo 2020 in Dubai. Visitors are thronging to the China and the Saudi Arabia pavilions. The two pavilions have been drawing crowds largely due to their excellent blend of traditional and high-tech advances. Take a look.
This week is Giant Panda Week, showcasing the best of China's technological advances and its rich traditions. Yo-Yo, the robotic panda, can dance and pose with you for photos in front of the China Pavilion. If you're lucky, you'll receive one of the 2,020 stuffed toy pandas being given away as gifts to visitors at Expo 2020 Dubai. There's also a 400 square meter exhibition inside the pavilion on giant panda conservation in China. It highlights the country's achievements in saving the species from endangered status through its successful propagation, reproduction, and release in the wild programs, as well as international scientific research cooperation on giant pandas.
Through a series of exhibitions, we combine the panda, a cultural icon with Chinese characteristics, with some technological innovations, which left a very deep impression on the visitors.
Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia's eye-catching pavilion invites the world for a glimpse of its future in less than a decade from now. Launched in 2016, the country's Vision 2030 includes a series of economic and social policies aimed at reducing the kingdom's dependence on oil exports.
The Saudi Arabia Pavilion hopes to invite the world to learn about the past, present, and future of Saudi Arabia, as well as the Vision 2030 blueprint, by exploring our pavilion.
In a corner of its sprawling exhibition area is an installation of 2,030 crystal beads symbolizing the year 2030. The kingdom has one of the largest pavilions in the entire expo, measuring approximately 2 football pitches, and is integrated with various high-technology elements. Its pavilion is second in size to the host country, United Arab Emirates. The $8 billion Expo 2020 Dubai, postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, opened on October the 1st and will run until the end of March in 2022. CGTN.
Well, let's shift focus now and take a look at commodity markets today. Coffee futures are on the rise. Dealers say that concerns that dry weather in top producer Brazil could hurt the flowering of next year's crop, and that's giving some support to prices right now, though some rains are still forecast over the next few days. Meanwhile, cocoa prices also climbing today as the market remains underpinned by heavy rainfall in top producer Côte d'Ivoire. The rain has, of course, triggered an outbreak of fungal black pod disease in some regions, and dealers are now beginning to focus on some third quarter data, which is expected next week, anticipating a rebound in demand going forward. On that note, let's take a short break now. Do stay with us. Lots more business news still coming up.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
I've been Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Now in South Africa, the Freedom Park Museum in Pretoria is now hosting an exhibition that is looking back at the photographic career of one of the country's greatest photographers, Peter Magubane. On display is a huge collection of Magubane's poignant photography that includes iconic images of struggle leaders and pivotal political moments in South Africa's history. Here's CGTN's Yolisa Njemela with more.
Dr. Peter Magubane is well known for his pioneering photography that has captured the history of apartheid and South Africa's many indigenous cultures.
From the township streets to the hallways of power, Dr. Peter Magubane has spent more than 60 years photographing the struggle against injustice and other social issues. Upon the release of the late former President Nelson Mandela, Dr. Magubane became the inside photographer to Mandela up until Mandela was elected president in 1994. All these works are shown here.
The agent of Dr. Magubane selected 23 images, and then the themes that I found when I was hanging it was that they were early 50s photographed the destruction of Sophia Town and the apartheid 1976 and post-1970, and also amazingly there's beautiful images of migration for people moving from rural areas to the urban areas, and also finding challenges in these cities where they could not be employed, but having to use their ingenuity to try and find and fight for their lives and invent other industries, which is amazing.
Mdanda says there are key works here that illustrate this country's history that one cannot miss.
There is a very powerful image of an old lady stopping or standing in front of a line of army soldiers with guns. As much as they were powerful, but she is more powerful than them in confronting these atrocities. It's like she's asking, what more can you do after having taken everything away from us? You know, it's such a powerful image. You know, a tiny little old lady standing in front of these soldiers with guns, but they are able to listen to her, and then she stops them on their track. You know, I find that very powerful.
Accompanying the works by Dr. Makubane is an exhibition by a young Johannesburg-based photographer, Viva Tabete. Tabete captures the cultural, spiritual, and religious traditions of South African communities in vivid color.
My work is who I am. My work is my roots, my identity, my heritage, and my spiritual as well, being as a human being. My work speaks and represents where I come from, and my work is about healing and evoking conversations. My work is about community as well. It's literally about not me being ashamed to tell my story, who I am as a black man in Africa. And my work won't change, even though times are changing. I still have to tell who I am and identify as the person I was born as in Africa. I'm grateful to have a collaboration with him. Literally grateful. It's life-changing. My life won't be the same.
The exhibition forms part of the country's heritage celebrations. Yolisa Njambela for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
And before we leave you today, a quick look at Africa's currencies. South Africa's rand firming up today. That's after slipping the previous day on concerns that surging energy prices will stoke inflation in the country. Also, increased interest rates drove investors towards safe haven assets today. Meanwhile, Nigeria's naira continuing to remain wobbly at the official window. That's despite a 118% jump in dollar supply. It remained pretty flat at the parallel market at around 575 naira per dollar. Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.